Hello there. Since Tru Shibes' channel has been taken down, I wanted to host one of the videos on deFOOing, which fits with the series I've released recently. You can find the full archive of Tru Shibes at Dailymotion, which I'll link to in the comments. Please enjoy.
So you think it's just people that are like the parents of these people that are separating that are pissed off at you because you're challenging the rule that they have over their children?
I know a lot of the people who have websites. In fact, one of them was even on my show, and so it's not a huge mystery to me as to what their identity is. Now, the other thing to remember is that I don't have a lot of shows about this. I've done 3,000 shows, of which 3 or 4 have been me talking about this topic, right? So this is not any kind of central focus of what it is. It's just if people ask me where the principles apply, I have to say where I think the principles apply, and I have to provide my arguments. So this is not a big topic for me. I understand, of course, it's a big topic for other people. And so if you have, if you are a parent and your child has had significant issues with you, that child has grown up, that child has listened to me, and they have sat down and, like, if I have any influence over someone, then what they should do, let's say, is do what I say, which is sit down, talk with your parents, try and work things out, remember that adult relationships are voluntary, and engage with a therapist if you're thinking of separating.
I've seen many of your things online, but I haven't listened to, quite honestly, I don't think I've ever listened to any of your positions on deFOOing with your family. I think everything I've gotten
I don't talk about it that much.
Everything I've gotten from is just communicating with you and then reading the criticism.
We have a sort of interesting personal challenge that's been cooking for about a year, a little longer for myself. Insofar as, we have no contact with what my wife calls the FOO, which is a slightly technical term for family of origin, and what I call the ABC, which is the accidental biological cage. And, gosh, I tell you, explaining this away is really not very easy. We face a lot of hostility.
Oh, no, you know what? I don't think it was that early. I mean, I knew there was stuff wrong with my family. And, as a number of people have pointed out in their emails to me, boy, you had a bad childhood. I didn't have nearly as bad a childhood, and therefore I don't have to cut out my sort of family of origin in the way that you did, because my family wasn't that bad. They didn't beat me. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. Maybe they yelled at me a little. Maybe I got spanked, but I certainly didn't go through what you went through, and so therefore I'm not subject to the same moral, you could say commandments, I guess, or the same moral strictures as you are to cut off relations with my family. Well, I think that's a fascinating viewpoint. Let me tell you a little bit about my history of how I came about all of this sort of stuff. And then, if that doesn't take too long, I'll tell you why it's important for me, why I want to clarify my position on these things. I'm heading into work, of course, and wanted to pick up where we left off yesterday in regards to the child and our relationship to our parents, and why it is not particularly relevant or productive to say that our relationship to our parents can be judged and redefined later on in life as good enough, or they did the right thing more or less, or they did what everyone else did, or they never really thought about their own parenting, they just were habitual parenters, or any sort of way that you can sort of slice and dice it. The reason that I want to talk about that is that that is a very common kind of moral justification that is given towards problematic parenting. And in a sense, I'm not really talking about abusive parenting in the way that I experienced it, because the kind of parenting that I experienced was actually kind of easier to figure out than the kind of parenting that a lot of other people, I mean, my wife, for instance, experienced. So, because I faced more of an extremity, I was able to see more of the principles involved. And that was something that was very helpful.
I mean, it was 20 years for me just to figure it out from the time I first knew that my mom was a weird, crazy, evil woman. 20 years to really absorb all those lessons, because there's nothing out in society that helps us. There are no movies or books that clarifies anything for us in terms of moral realities. There's no one out there shouldering us and supporting us through these horrible moral choices that are frowned upon by just about everybody in society, and which we're going to get cast out for should we have the temerity to ditch our family of origin for and strike out for healthier climes. And it's one of the reasons I want to do these podcasts. It's basically one of the reasons is for the younger people out there who are facing these kinds of problems to at least know that on the other side is this wonderful, wonderful life, and it's well worth doing. The other thing that I would say, why do it when you're young, is because your parents will let you go. They will not probably let you go when they get older, because they need you. Of course, as we get older, we become frail, we become sickly, we become demanding. We need resources from people, and it's, I think, somewhat important to some degree, and not in any morbid sense, but to live your life with one eye on the deathbed, working backwards, right? So what do I need when I'm dying? Who do I need to be there? And how am I going to get that? I mean, that's important. I wanted to top off this idea of the families and why it is that I think it's important that parents who are not productive or satisfying or enjoyable or happy-making in your life should be ditched. And, you know, the how to do it is absolutely up to you. There's no easy way to do it, and I'm not even going to try and suggest any ways of approaching that problem, because it is a very difficult problem and there is no easy solution to it. And, of course, you know me, I'm all about the easy solutions. So I wanted to talk about another one of the reasons why it's important to do it, why I think it's a moral, I say moral imperative is probably too strong a word, but why I think it's very important to do this, and what effect I think it will have on the long term. But the world is not free, and the world can be free, and it can be such a beautiful and wonderful place. But we all have to act, and it's very difficult, and we have to go against social convention, and we have to, if we believe in the free market and we believe in the principle of voluntary association for mutual benefit, then we have to get rid of the people in our lives who do not benefit us, regardless of what society says. I mean, if we're so concerned about society and what society says, why would we be libertarians to begin with? If you want to look for the abuse of power within your own life, look at those who commanded your life when you were young. And get those people out of your life unless you love them to death, in which case, more power to you. I think that's wonderful. But it's not the case. It's not the case. It is really just amazing what happened that day, that I just fully formed, got this, I have to break with my brother. And it's similar in a way, sort of just strikes me now, and of course it should be obvious, but I hadn't really thought about it. It just sort of strikes me now that it's exactly the same as what happened with my mother. Everything we talk about politically is hypocritical. Everything. You are not a libertarian if you spend time with people you do not love. You are not a libertarian if you show up for family functions that you don't enjoy, or which you'd rather be doing something else than be there. You are not a libertarian if you are involved in a relationship which is against your values, which is exploitive, which is negative, which is difficult, which is abusive in any way, shape, or form, obviously, which is manipulative, which is where you do not love the person, and you do not feel a gush of love when they walk into the room and a desire to jump in their arms. You are not a libertarian if you are involved in a relationship with a partner simply because they're available and they're willing to have sex with you. You are not a libertarian if you're involved in a relationship with the dream or the fantasy or the hope or the expectation that that person will change. Because you don't have the right to be in a relationship and expect somebody else to change. Because that is a positive right. You must change for me.
I'm in this relationship conditionally, and you must change for me, and until you do change for me, I will not love you. Or I will not love you as much. Or I will reserve the right to not love you when you do not exhibit behaviors that I like. You are not a libertarian if you're in those situations. To hell with the state. To hell with God. To hell with the church. To hell with priests. Doesn't matter. It's your personal relationships where freedom has to show up in. And if it doesn't show up in there, don't talk to me about politics. Don't write to me emails about, can I get an ought from an is? I mean, it's nonsense. This is my way of saying that childhood is a prison. Our childhoods, our collective childhoods, were prisons. And I know I'm going to get even more emails about this. And people, I had a good relationship with my mom and dad. Oh, they were fine. They were this, they were that. No, I'm sorry. I got to tell you, and I hate to say it because I don't mean to be a bully, but you're wrong. Everybody, unless your parents are like brain-arcing geniuses who have managed to figure out all of the ethics that we're struggling with, and all of the epistemology, all of the metaphysics, and have figured out, and know how to apply that to child raising and this and that. If they are deities of the mind and spirit who can overcome 5,000 years of crap that we've been force-fed, which is just the icing on the cake of like 50,000 years of tribal stupidities, if they've managed to do all of that and fully integrate it into their parenting, by God, you can raise my children and me. So please give me a shout. Failing that, your childhood was a prison, and it was a prison that didn't matter, and it didn't matter how many other people were in the same prison. It really doesn't matter at all. And that, I think, is very important. And the other thing which we talk about, at least in this sort of free domain radio context, is that families are not always the best of institutions. I mean, I guess that's about as mild a way as putting it as I can think of. But your family is not likely to be very good. And, I'm sort of talking to you like I know you, but I do from this standpoint that I can guarantee you that your family is really not very good. And they may be nice to you, and they may buy you clothes, and they may put food on the table, and so on. But if you really start asking them questions about right and wrong, and good and evil, and truth and falsehood, they're going to get kind of mad at you. And that's just kind of for a lot of reasons, I guess you could say. But the main reason is that they've been telling you all about right and wrong and good and evil and true and false since the day you were born, but unfortunately they don't really know what they're talking about. The way that you get free of your family, or free of the pain of having dysfunctional family relationships, is you become vulnerable with your family. The only reason that we get stuck in these relationships is because part of us believes that there's value there. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something that's been going on the boards and in my emails for the last week or two, which is people who are getting close to the cliff edge of breaking with corrupt families. Amen, power to you, brothers, hallelujah, God be praised. It is a fantastic thing to be doing. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear. First of all, congratulations and most honor from on high to you for having the courage to talk openly about your fear. That is what is known as helping to isolate the false self. So we're going to continue this afternoon to talk about breaking free of the foo busting, busting out of the foo bar. And I would like to talk a little bit, so we mentioned sort of this morning about some of the methodology behind it, some of the reasons before it. But what I would like to do is to continue on with the slightly interrupted, but we hope for good reason, series on how we might conceivably get rid of a corrupt family of origin, a deFOO-ing. Now, you will get, when you sit down and talk with your family, as we talked about in part 2, you will get a whole series of objections from your family, a whole series of things which are to say, it's wrong for you to do what you're doing. It's wrong for you to want to take a time off from your family. It's wrong for you to want to withdraw in any way, shape, or form. And you will get lots of stuff like that. We must deal with our families as if they were just anyone. There is no virtue in genetics. There is no value in accidental, entwined histories. We can only love virtue. You will be ostracized, I said, wrote to this gentleman. You will be you will be ostracized by your family for not going to see your grandfather. This is painful, of course, but it is a big plus, since you can, in one fell swoop, get rid of all of the bad people in your life.
The reason that we're doing this podcast today is so that I can share some experiences of my own with the faithful listeners of Free Domain Radio about deFOO-ing. I haven't seen my parents in almost 2 years. I think the anniversary date of the last time I saw them is coming up at the end of October. And it's been a real struggle. It's been a real struggle for me. It's not an easy process. I completely empathize and sympathize and have a great deal of compassion for those who are going through this process.
Yeah, to make a long story semi-short, I left the company. I left my girlfriend. I ceased to see my brother. I ceased to see my mother, all within the span of 6 to 8 months, I think it was.
How do you break the oldest dictatorship? And really, that's why there's been this deFOO-ing theme. And this is why, although the hardest thing other than deFOO-ing is talking to people about deFOO-ing, I think it's something that it's important to do, because people don't even know that they can. They don't even know that it's an option. So when you talk about deFOO-ing, which is basically just living with integrity, right? Living philosophically, living with values, it is an amazing thing what it does to people's conception of what is possible. Because all you have to do is make it possible for people, and then that's the only chink that the true self needs to start burrowing its way out.
The painful and scary part is has always been the guilt associated with it. Are you doing the right thing? No, I have an attachment to these people, and I should be there for them, and yeah, and they mean so much to me, and I mean so much to them, and it's more the guilt. But in actual, yeah, the guilt is the shoulds. I should be a part of that. I should be in their life. They gave so much to me. They did so much to me. But when you pull away from that, you recognize, as I've recognized the stuff mentioned earlier, that you really don't miss these people. And then some people will have guilt about not missing them as well, but that's a whole other issue.
Right. Of course, I had to shed all of that stuff myself. I shed my 7-year relationship. I shed most of my friends. I shed my mom, my dad, my brother, my extended family. Everybody had to go, right? And there's like 6 billion people in the world enslaved to their family. One guy gets away. I don't think it's going to cause everything to unravel. But with any luck, it will. He said, "You won't get anywhere with that line of reasoning because I'm not arguing against it. I could deFOO right now and live in poverty for the rest of my life. No, I will be a good son and go to church and get married and get a nice cushy government job after my parents pay my tuition like they did for my sisters." And he replied, "What I need is money. If I don't get a good job, I won't have any money. If I don't finish college, I won't be able to get a good job. If my parents don't start helping me soon, I won't be able to finish college. If I don't appease my parents, they aren't going to help me pay for college. Subscribing to your philosophy only undermines me at every level of my ambitions." So I saw a pattern here, and I jumped in, and I said, "You feel frustrated and angry, but helpless. You want to avoid that helpless feeling because it will propel you into action which you fear. Because you will not process your fear and frustration, you are provoking it in others, here on the board, by attacking virtue, talking about suicide, and rejecting all help. Board members, don't get sucked in. Bob, get off the goddamn fence and get rid of your family." First of all, it's not easy to deFOO. Anyone who thinks it is has never done it. And secondly, if you grow through difficulties, then you are bestowing a great gift of growth on your parents by not seeing them, because it's difficult for them if you don't see them, right? So difficulty is good, though. They should not want you back, because they should embrace the difficulty of not having you around as a great path for growth. But I've never once heard one of these people, if they find out that I don't see my mom, I've never once
had them call up my mom and say, well, this is a great growth opportunity because this is really difficult. This is really difficult to not have your son around. What a great growth opportunity. This is really the right thing to do. Oh, no, they don't do that. They don't do that. Why? Because they're scared of my mom, because she's a crazy bat. And a nasty one at that. No, what they do is they pick on the sanest person, right? They pick on the most rational person. Right? This woman is not phoning up this guy's mom. He deFOO'd, right? The listener who posted this email. His friend is not phoning up his mom and saying, what a great opportunity for growth this difficulty is. I know it's difficult that your son is not seeing you, but we shouldn't always try and do what is easy in life. We should do what is difficult, and that is to let him go. No. She doesn't do that. Why? 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 Why is this a 100% ratio of picking on the children and a 0% ratio of picking on the parents? I don't even have to answer, do I?
The first question or issue that came up is if you're going to deFOO, like if you just sort of have gone over your family relations and you have tried to connect with people and you have found that it is rejected or scorned or negated or ignored or it's not satisfying, and you've reached the end of that road of sort of finding your way out of the cage by going to the trapdoor in the foggy center of it, and you've decided to deFOO, sort of two central questions have come up. One is the content of the letter that you may or may not be sending, and I would certainly recommend that you do send to your FOO. And my sort of suggested wording, and I know that this sounds a little silly, but I think it makes sense, is think of it like you're quitting a job. Right? If you're quitting a job, you don't have to go into lengthy explanations about why you're quitting your job. You know, like if you've had some job where the boss has been a jerk and you decide to quit that job, you don't necessarily need to send a 12-page letter detailing the times and dates and everything that occurred and everything that was said and done that defines your boss as a jerk, right? Because you're leaving the job. It doesn't matter, right? You're leaving the family, right? You're leaving the job.
When I say I'm beginning the deFOOing process, I mean I'm starting the preparations for it.
Sure.
Meaning I'm starting the financial independence. That's the big thing, because I don't know if you remember from Composing the Past.
Yeah.
That they're paying for my education, and but that doesn't
go right. And it's not like you're going to make a fortune on it the moment you graduate.
If these are your values, what are you going to do about your relationship where you really have control and power? If we're going to ask people to give up the state, but we won't give up our friends, if we're going to ask people to give up their subsidies, like the farmers or the military, if we're going to ask people to give up their subsidies, but we hang around corrupt parents because they're paying for our university, that's just hypocrisy. And nobody's going to take that at all seriously. And then you might as well not do it, right? And that's what I keep saying to people. If you're going to go philosophy, go the whole hog. Do it all.
No, I mean, the way I feel, I mean, for Candice, there's a lot of emotion. I mean, there's a lot. And there's going to be a lot of guilt. I can feel it when we make that break. I mean, if and when it comes, like in the future, we deFOO.
Yeah, but for my future children,
yeah,
I think this is going to be worth it to get away from them,
right.
because I don't want them to know my mom and dad.
Yeah,
it's not worth it.
What I'm saying is that I could.
So once you got your personal life cleaned up and you've gotten rid of the bad people in your life and you worked with vulnerability and so on, when people say, well, what now? As if you don't know. You know. You know what now. I'm just telling you directly so that you can't hide from your knowledge of what's next, which you know. And the reason I know that you know is you're not buying T-shirts. That's how I know that you know what is next. What is next is getting out into the world. What is next is spreading the health that you have earned through this conversation, through your application of this conversation. Once you have cured yourself, the next step is to cure the world.
So, what does your mom say about your deFOO? What is her rage saying?
How dare you leave us? How dare you?
Okay, but tell me what it means when you say my fear is the fear that I'm not going to be able to do this. Do you mean sort of separate from your parents?
Right, like, just practically. I mean, emotionally, I don't think I have a problem with it.
Well,
It's
that ship already sails, right?
right, right. And right now, it's just like, you
You can't go back.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
even
I
if you
know.
wanted to, right? Even if somebody said, I'll pay you $1 million to go back and be friendly with your parents, you can't, right?
Right. Yeah, I know. It's just,
So it's the car
It's
and the birth
really-
certificate that stand between you and freedom?
it's also the fear that I'm gonna, like, things are gonna fall apart and I'm gonna need to go back and all that stuff.
Like, okay, that's how would that happen, right? How would things seriously like fall apart? Like what?
Like, I can't get a job, we can't pay the rent,
But
and
then
this
don't
sort
you
of
go
thing.
on welfare or something? But what happens is they eventually tell us to go away,
Uh-huh.
right? Because when we're honest with them, we're no longer serving their needs.
Right.
So they don't have any use for us if we're not supporting their fantasies.
Right.
They reject us. And the deFOO is not we leave our wailing parents in the dust. My family didn't even call me when I started being honest with them.
Okay.
Right? They don't think, oh shit, is he telling the truth? Hit the eject button. We gotta get rid of him. We're about lies here. We're not about telling the truth. Shit, who knows where that could lead? Oh, we know. That's not a good place, right?
Yeah.
So we all take this burden on, like, we're going to be the ones that deFOO, and oh my God, we're going to separate from our parents, and we're going to pull their arms off our neck and cast them to the to earth, and we're going to stalk off, and they'll be reaching after us, sobbing, and we like with this drama thing, this big soap opera. It's all nonsense.
Exactly.
What happens is we tell the truth, they hit the button, we're gone.
Wow.
And you know that, and you know that, and you've known that since you were like 1 year old.
I had a question along a similar line. Obviously, Staff was a little bit farther along the whole, deFOO thing when he met you. So I was wondering how, or where do your relative positions have to be? I mean, you don't have to be obviously in the exact same place in your life or in the process as your partner, right? But how much of a difference with that is too much of a difference? Is that even quantifiable?
Given that I had counseled people to leave their families, I wasn't opposed to the idea. And so when it came for me time to explore my relationship with my family and really look at it in a way I hadn't before, I was already open to the idea. And again, not that everybody needs to deFOO, but it wasn't a foreign concept to me. It wasn't something that I had to sort of learn to accept or work through and understand, because there is a lot of opposition to the sort of the deFOO. But it was something that I advocated. People come from abusive families, don't stay in your family. So we weren't too far apart on that, except Steph had actually gone and done it, and I hadn't really looked at my family close enough to make that decision.
So I deFOO'd. I got away from my parents, and what's to say? Close. Okay, and well, I don't really know where to begin.
But I'll say, man, since deFOO, things have been incredible. Dreams, memories, lost memories, my motivation, my relationship with my girlfriend. I mean, the honesty and integrity I've been able to bring to this relationship has made me love her and her love me so much more. I mean, even sex is better. after deFOO, and not that that's the reason to do it, but I've just found the experience to be just so rewarding and so liberating, and I really appreciate the work you've done to help me kind of see the hypocrisy that I was surrounded by.
You are very welcome. There's not a lot of deFOO stories that come with a porn soundtrack, but I certainly don't dismiss the implications. It is it is something that look. I am absolutely convinced that when I got an abusive family of origin out of my life, I got my great family now. I am truly convinced that I would not have ended up married to the wonderful woman that I am married to if I'd have said, "Oh, here's the mother I love. Let's go spend some time with her," and been who I was around my mother and allowed this woman to see that I valued my mother. Sorry. So if that is what is occurring, I'm just enjoying that Freudian slip there. Truly a Freudian slip, but the like the deFOO, which for those who don't know is just, it's like a divorce, right? It's just like this relationship is unsustainable, it's abusive, it can't be rescued, it can't be saved, and so on. And so for me, my family was my herpes, and my friends were my herpes, and it's like, oh, nice guy, kind of a lot of tribal herpes there. So no, thank you. But for me, it's like, hey, go to therapy. Ooh, you know what? My family is really toxic. I'm going to take a break from my family, blah, 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 blah. I did all that. Cleaned up my friendships, got the crazy people out of my life, after confrontations, after attempting to work with them, after attempting to make them a little less crazy, which I was not expecting to happen and was confirmed that it wasn't going to happen. I get out of that. Who do I meet? I meet my wife to be. So quickly. And boy, if I hadn't had my act together, if I wasn't free of the base tribe of low rent crazy, holy crap. Everybody was deeply shocked in the interview which I was having when I said I have not seen my parents in, 13 years. And I have no intention whatsoever of ever seeing them again. And if there is a God, I hope he'll put me in a different section of hell from them. Right? So everybody was deeply shocked.
Yeah.
And I said, no. You see, every time I tell this story, then I promote consequentialism for abuse. And abusers sure as hell aren't going to change based on virtue, but maybe they'll change based on consequentialism. I don't do it for that purpose. But when you stay in abusive relationships, you are signaling to all abusers that they'll get away with it. And you're just encouraging it. You're just encouraging it. You're suffering the consequences, but other people suffer from those consequences. So if this woman was saying, well, my parents are verbally horribly abusive, but I love them, it's like, well, Christ, now all you're doing is saying to parents who are verbally abusive, yeah, you'll get away with it. It doesn't just have consequences for you, it has consequences for other people. When you break out of and reject abusive and irredeemable relationships, you are sending a clear signal across the world, which all abusers are listening for at all times. Can I get away with it? 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 That's all they're thinking. And a lot of the social morals and structures that are put in place are designed so that abusers can get away with abuse, whether it's taxation or the military-industrial complex or welfare but you can't leave your parents. They're your parents, right? That's all just set up by abusers. All you're doing is mouthing the words of abusers who want to get away with it. But if you reject and dissociate from abusive relationships and don't keep it like some guilty secret, I'm incredibly proud of what I have done with my abusive family of origin. I'm proud of that. Do you think it's hard now? Jesus, try 13 years ago. Imagine saying that to people. I mean, I was one of the first I was certainly the first that I've ever known of. I'm incredibly proud of that. And I'm incredibly proud of spreading the idea of voluntary adult relationships through this show. It is my hope that abusers hear this and say, oh shit, the game's up. Oh shit, somebody's openly talking about having nothing to do with unrepentant, irredeemable, abusive parents. Oh, well, I guess this gig is up. We're going to have to do better. So I don't have the luxury of giving advice. I am going to give absolutely unenforceable orders. All right?
Sure.
You had a terrible childhood. This is one of the worst childhoods I've ever heard of, and I've heard of some doozies. All right? I mean, you were chemically raped, abandoned, confined, abused, incarcerated, demonized, rejected, scorned, labeled, which is a very powerful thing to occur for a child. And there's almost nothing bad that could have happened to you that didn't happen to you, and it is a completely heartbreaking story, one that is tragically common among the military. The ruling classes use broken and smashed up childhoods as weaponized instruments of domination around the world. All right? And this is why the government has no incentive to end child abuse. Because the government needs abuse victims as enforcers. So, like with the first callers, your incredibly heartbreaking and tragic story is part of a larger picture of livestock management. Brutalize the children and you can murder foreigners. And this is why we will never have peace while we have a state. The state cannot survive without enforcers, and enforcers cannot be created without abuse. The state is a shadow cast by child abuse. The people who really serve the state are abusive parents. Everything else is just profit from their immorality. The real rulers are the abusive parents. The political rulers merely exploit their products. Does this make any sense to you?
Absolutely.
The toxicity of your childhood is so great that I believe all repeated exposures to it is life-threatening to you. Let me say that again. Your early childhood was so toxic and abused that I believe that all exposure to perpetrators is dangerous to your very life. I do not believe that you can survive by having the perpetrators of your child abuse around you for the foreseeable future. It is literally a matter of survival for you. And can you imagine what it will do to your children if they wake up to find daddy's cold body in the living room? Little bit of alcohol poisoning, vomit dribbling out of his mouth, and his cold eyes staring to the black infinity which preceded our existence. Now, the other thing to remember is that I don't have a lot of shows about this. I've done 3,000 shows, of which 3 or 4 have been me talking about this topic.
Mm-hmm.